thumbs up. Okay, right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome along to today's Planning and Rights of Way Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Richard Butler, the chairman of the committee, and welcome. With me today, I've got fellow councillors, Councillor Creamer, who's my vice chairman, and Councillors Adams, Camilleri, Corden, Creamer, Henry, Meakin, Purdue Horan, Councillor Sam Smith, and Councillor Moxon. Sorry, I missed you off the list, Nigel. Before we go into the agenda, I just want to add an extra item at the end. At the final part of the agenda, we'll have a short presentation from Nick Crouch on ecological matters. But it's not on your agenda, but just bear that in mind at the end of the meeting. Could I just ask our officers to introduce yourselves, please? And so, Mr. Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. My name is David Marsh, and I'm the Major Projects Senior Practitioner.
I'm Tommy Cluley, Planning, Monitoring and Enforcement Officer.
Joel Marshall, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you. And also remotely, I think we've got, we've got Neil, haven't we? I beg your pardon, Neil. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Neil Lewis, Countryside Access Team Manager at the County Council, Rights of Way and Open Spaces. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed you off there. It wasn't deliberate. I was looking at I'll blame the specs, just looking at the front row. And remotely, I think we've got Jonathan Smith is with us as well, who can't be with us today physically, but is with us, I think. Yes, you're there. So, well,
can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
And we have this new technology, which is similar to the old, but even clearer. And it's a bit scary because we can see ourselves on the screen here. And that's, yeah. So we'll go into the first item on the agenda, which is a formal apologies for absence, please.
Thank you. We have today an apology from Councillor Fielding. We have an apology from Councillor Henshaw, and Councillor Henry is here substituting. And we also have an apology from Councillor Williamson. Oh, and we also, apologies, we have Councillor Taylor here, and that is in substitution for Councillor Owen.
Thank you very much. So, item 2 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of September. For those of us who were there, are we happy that they're correct? I'll sign them. I'll sign them, initial and sign them later. So, save for time. Thank you. So, item 3, any declarations of interest that anyone wishes to report? No. Okay. It's actually, I should say, it's declarable pecuniary interests and or private interests, and nothing to report on those. And do we have any members wishing to declare any lobbying? No. Okay, thank you. So we'll move into the first of our applications for today, and this is the registration of a town or a village green in South Scarl. I'll move the recommendation, which is on page 24, and a seconder, please.
Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. So I'll now hand over to Neil for to talk us, Mr. Lewis, to talk us through the application, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. So yeah, Neil Lewis, Team Manager, Countryside Access. So this is a report to consider an application for the registration of a town or village green in the parish of South Scarl. So Nottinghamshire County Council, as a town and village green registration authority, we're required to process and either accept or reject an application solely on the facts and as per the legislation. So any other issues such as suitability, desirability, or community needs are not legally relevant. So we're just looking at the criteria within the legislation. Location map here of the said application. So the application is in the parish of South Scarl, so to the east of the county, of course. And then here's a site plan. So the area which is subject to the application is shown as the cross hatching on Appendix A. So Section 15 of the Commons Act states that any person may apply to register land as a town or village green, and states that there must be a significant number of the inhabitants of any locality or of any neighbourhood within a locality have indulged as of right in lawful sports and pastimes on the land for a period of at least 20 years, and they continue to do so at the time of that application. So what does this mean? Well, significant number, not necessarily a large number of people, but something more than an occasional use and trespass. Locality, this means a legally recognised admin area such as a ward or a parish or a district. Neighbourhood is a little bit more vague, so this means a self-contained area. And a good example I always quote is something like Lady Bay here at West Bridgford. As of right, so not by force, not by stealth, not creeping around at night time, or even by permission, so as of right. Lawful sports and pastimes, so this is general roaming, it could be blackberry picking, it could be children playing, for example. On the land, well, the land doesn't have to look like a traditional village green, so that the idea we have sometimes, something like at Wellow, it could just be a normal sort of parcel of land, normally a green parcel. And for a period of 20 years, so at least 20 years, so this is similar to rights of way claims where it must demonstrate a use of over 20 years without interruption and use, and it continues to do so at the time of the application. So the application is shown as Appendix B, and to summarise the application, the land has no registered owner. The land is referred to as common land, but it's not registered common land. There's unrestricted access to properties and fields. The land was used by the adjacent smithy for raising pigs. Public footpath number 9 runs adjacent and is used in conjunction with the land. As you can see, the dashed line on Appendix A on the plan. Sections of the land have also been used by South Scarl Nature Group to plant flora. The justification is to maintain free access to the said land. An adjacent owner asserts the land is in his ownership, and the adjacent owner has improved the said land without consultation with the parish meeting. 9 letters from 12 local residents were received in support of the application. These are summarised as: the land has been used by walkers and horse riders. The nature group used the land to plant flora. Private registration of the land at the land registry is opposed. There's a desire to implement future environmental improvements on the land. Until about 17 years ago, the land was rough and has since been improved by a local resident. And there is a need to protect it as a local pathway by registering it as a village green. The application, as per the regulations, was published on site in the local newspaper and notifications to the nearest occupiers. This generated 3 objections, and these are summarised as: drainage work started in 2002, and inquiries regarding these led the landowner to believe any works would be a private matter. During the works and over the years, a large amount of rubble and other material was removed from the site. Topsoil was laid and seeded by the adjacent landowner. Prior to this, it was impossible to use the land for lawful sports or pastimes. The lane has been made good by adjacent occupiers. The land has not had access or has been used for lawful sports and pastimes for 20 years. The support letter mainly refers to use of the public footpath, and the application refers to land as part of an adjacent occupier's driveway. And again, as part of the regulations, the applicant was given the opportunity to respond. And this is summarised as: the owner of the old smithy verbally claimed to the parish clerk that he owns the land, and a dispute arose over the use of the land by the nature group. The land is not registered with the land registry. Improvements are acknowledged, but this was done without consultation to the parish meeting. As the land is not registered, the parish felt it must be protected. There is no intention to impinge on any other private rights. It was never claimed that the land was used for sports, but is used for recreational activities. The application is to maintain free access. At the meeting in July, the committee meeting, we were all set to present the report today, what we're presenting today, but at the last minute, the applicants presented some extra information. So to ensure that we could absorb that as officers, and also we distributed that to committee members, and we also gave the opportunity to the objectors as well to see that information. So the supporting document is attached as Appendix C to the report, and this document is from the parish meeting, and it contains responses to the issues considered in the deferred report, so site photos, statement from a long-term resident and farmer of the parish, and it sums up and gives a background and some historical perspective to the case, and this can be summarised as: regarding the significant number of inhabitants, approximately 20 people per day use the space, and 6%, 12 people, of inhabitants provided written support. Regarding the locality, the criteria has been met. Regarding use as of right, agricultural use of the land ceased in 1956, and since then, no permission has been sought or given for use of the land, and no prohibitive notices have been seen. Regarding sports pastimes and recreational activities, the land acts as an informal village meeting space for dog walkers. It is also used for nature watching and blackberry picking. In the past, when there was more children in the parish, it was also used for games such as hide and seek and den building. Regarding on the land, most of the land is and has been accessible, notwithstanding the vegetation. Regarding the period of 20 years use has been for longer than this. Regarding continuing at the time of the application, use does continue except for the nature group. In summary, the applicant believes that the criteria has been met and that community needs should be taken into account. Site photos show the site including the nature group and their work in 2019 and as it is in 2022. Also within the submission is a written statement from a local farmer detailing agricultural use and maintenance of the land for access and for taking hay, clipping sheep, keeping pigs, shoeing horses, and also for camping by the Scouts. South Scarl Parish Meeting have also submitted a collection of 88 signatures from South Scarl residents in support of the application. So this come in earlier in the year. In order to satisfy the legislation and grounds for registration, the application must meet all the tests alluded to earlier. In summary, use has only been demonstrated on an occasional basis by a limited number of people. The locality is identified as being South Scarl Parish and meets the criteria. There is nothing in the application to say that limited use was not of right. The application is relying on lawful pastimes. This is through the nature group's planting of flora on a limited area of land by a small membership. It does not appear that the land has been used for a period of 20 years. Finally, the application states that the work of the nature group has ceased on a temporary basis prior to the application. The recommendation is, it is recommended that as the application has not met all of the required criteria for registration of the land as town or village green, it is rejected for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lewis. At this point, do any members have any points of clarification they want to raise with Mr. Lewis at this stage? We can come back to them later. Right, okay, thank you. So we have 3 guest speakers on this item from members of the public, and the way it works is you have up to 3 minutes each to address the committee, and then when we're getting up to 3 minutes, the clerk will, if you're still speaking at 3 minutes, the clerk will warn you that 3 minutes is almost, time is up. So the 3 speakers are Kate Morell, Peter Rowlands and David Duffield. So who is going to go first? And you are?
David Duffield will go first.
Righty ho, Mr. Duffield. So, thank you. And I'm impressed. You've worked out how the microphone works. So that's very good. So, as soon as you're ready, you've got up to 3 minutes to address us. Thank you.
So this application is not specifically a village green, it's for a green space. It came about because in 2020, Mr. Smalley, the owner of the smithy and nearby residents, opposed and prevented the village nature project planting indigenous species with small signage on a rough triangular patch of ground near to his property. It's etched on the map. I discussed this with him, my being a parish clerk of SSPM, and the work being approved by the nature group by the council. He should not be preventing this. He claimed that when he bought the old smithy, it included a strip of land stretching north to agricultural fields from the building past his property and other land he owned. I note since this time he applied to Her Majesty's Land Registry for a first registration of the land claimed. This was opposed by the South Scar Parish meeting, local farmers and residents. HMLR cancelled his application. He was unhappy about farm traffic and owners of nearby stables churning up the track he was maintaining, not actually initiated by himself, the track. He indicated that he had complained to neighbours and farmers, channels about their tractors, etc., and was considering not allowing access to the stables and farmland. I was informed of the improvements he made to access and drainage, including filling potholes in the track. Following this meeting in 2020, I was given a black and white copy of the land registry plan showing the smithy and dotted area of land stretching north and past this, which he claimed to be his property. Official land registry copies and other properties of this and other properties in the area for the smithy show the red boundary line that the land area owned was only that upon which the building stood, showing the land that he was claiming not owned by him or any other party. There being no apparent owner of the land in this application, South Scar Parish meeting officers agreed to applying to register the area as a green space to guarantee public access and recreational use across this land adjacent to the public footpath number 9, and for the nature group to resume their nature trail and wilding project unhindered. The application started in 2020. Mr. Smalley created a sterile domestic landscape from a former natural track and footpath containing wild flora and fauna. It is now just mown grassed areas on the land he claims is his and hardcore road surface, removing some of the original wild grasses and in way of footpath number 9, and in the process acted with impunity over this area.
30 seconds.
Registration of this land as a green space is within the law, and this will guarantee access from this unregistered space. It would allow restoration of the indigenous grasses, natural public footpath number 9, reintroduction of berries, hops, etc. for the nature trail. Mr. Smalley objected and called at my house and in fact threatened me with court. I believe Mr. Smalley is trying to intimidate us to stop the application. This application is of value to all who pass along here, rambling, dog walking, fruit picking, horseshoe riding, access to work fields, conserve, improve the natural beauty of what was known as an occupation land or Blacksmith Lane.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
You've just gone over the 3 minutes, but I understand. Sometimes 3 minutes can seem a long time, sometimes it can't it? But it was all very clear. Thank you. Do any members have any points of clarification they'd like to raise with Mr. Duffield at this stage? No. Okay, thank you. So our next, well, who's speaking next? Also, sorry,
I think Neil. Yes, Chair.
yeah, did you want to come in, Neil? No, we'll wait until a general discussion. So who's going next? I've got Mr. Rowlands.
Peter Rowlands, Chair of the Parish.
Right. So you're Mr. Rowlands. So again, you've got up to 3 minutes to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you. As Chairman, I attend today's meeting in support of the application made by Mr. David Duffield on behalf of South Scar Parish meeting. The consensus of the parish is that this unregistered land should be designated a green space in perpetuity. Mr. Duffield, in his previous role as parish clerk, initially liaised with Mr. Smalley on access issues in 2019 regarding him objecting to public access to the application area. Further to Mr. Smalley's intransigence, Mr. Duffield then did an excellent job of submitting this application after researching all matters with due diligence. It needs to be made clear that overt personal use of this land by Mr. Smalley, land that's not legally his, has intentionally created a restriction to public access such that people were disinclined to use the area. He has domesticated this area, which is historically wild, as a footpath, track for vehicles and wild areas. That said, at the previous committee meeting some months ago, I was surprised at the officer's recommendation to reject rather than support this application. Due to COVID delays and the fact that Notts County Council had no appropriately trained staff to deal with the matter, it's dragged on for far too long, and residents wish to see this area secured for their continued use. 3 minutes is nowhere near enough to persuade you. However, following the adjournment at the last meeting, you are now in support of further evidence to support our application. Point 11 of the report states it's settled in law that there's no specific requirement for organised games, but general roaming and fruit picking will suffice. That's something that's gone on here for generations. Point 15F states the nature group has temporarily ceased. Well, it ceased in 2019 when Mr. Smalley removed their signage, threw grass cuttings over the area and told them it was his land, which is why we're here today. Point 16 states correctly that 9 letters were received in support. The low number received being a result of COVID and us not being able to call an extraordinary meeting. Since then, you will have received a much more recent petition signed by 90 villagers out of a population of 150. Point 18 states it can be seen that the land has not had interrupted applicants as stated in this application. It's based on the nature group activities. I've lived in the parish for 22 years and access has always been uninterrupted by both parishioners, members of the public, agricultural vehicles throughout this period and a long time before, according to residents. The comments regarding no dog walking for 20 years are complete poppycock. On any given day, at least 15 or more parishioners walk their dogs, as my wife would attest. Today, as chairman, I urge you on behalf of the parish to grant this application. If you're not so inclined, then the parish point of view, we would seek a public inquiry and a report by an independent inspector, as point 31. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowlands, again in 3 minutes. I'm conscious of the fact that you have referred to a Mr. Smalley, who is a landowner, or you're referring to him. He's not here today, and so I really just need to make that clear for members and the record, really, that we're just hearing from the applicants for this today. We're not hearing from people who may be opposed to the application. I felt I ought to say that because you referred to a gentleman's name, so I hope everyone understands on that. So our final speaker, is this Miss Morel? So again, you've got up to 3 minutes to talk to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I represent the South Scarl Nature Project, and we're supporting the application to convert this land into valuable green space for the village. I started the Nature Project with a few like-minded people in 2017, and anyone from the village is welcome to join us. The project's plan, as supported and approved by the parish meeting, was to plant native flowers and bulbs around the whole village, including the application area. There we planted native bulbs, foxgloves and muskmallow, put up 2 small signs showing where the plantings were. Unfortunately, they were pulled out, grass clippings thrown over them. At this point, we didn't want to waste time and money having our efforts vandalised, so we stopped whilst inquiries were made. So the reports claim that we only used 4% of the land is totally unfair because we never got a chance to do anything else. We also take issue with the report's repeated references to some areas being rough, therefore bad, and other areas being tidy or well maintained, therefore good. This is subjective, emotive and not environmentally aware terminology. Historically, local farmers took hay from the land and it's now a closely mown, sterile area. Under our care, in areas not being used for access, we envisage planting a couple of fruit or berry-bearing trees, having grass at different lengths to support various insect populations, maybe a wood pile in a corner, a few patches where we take the turf off and put in some perennial wildflower mix, annual cornflowers, plug plants grown by the group, foxgloves, mulleins, mallows, vipers, bugloss, things that grow in the village. And the village might also like to put a bench in. In this present climate, we're all encouraged to protect our green space and try to provide plant-rich habitats, as in your Nottinghamshire Greening Up brochure. We work with support and advice from Notts Wildlife Trust. Mark Speck from Nottingham Wildlife and Langford Lowfields RSPB officers have previously given open presentations to the village. And with the recent influx of more children, we're keen on working with the Trust's programmes for children. Katie Smith is our recent Notts Wildlife contact and supports us as her submitted report shows. She's seen the land and she supports us. It's wrong to suggest that the area is very little used by the village. We refute that, challenge all of the criteria. And just to show, elsewhere in the village, we've already turned 3 acres of set-aside land into an attractive wildflower meadow. This shows that we are capable as a group of evolving barren land into a habitat-rich environment. Recently, a group member has suggested at a parish meeting that the village should adopt a general rewilding policy for the area, an idea which is now being developed, and this would work brilliantly alongside our plans for the application land. Our village's sole aim is to keep the application land available to all and transform it from an overmown, unproductive area facing the threat of a land grab into a habitat-rich village asset. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's again in 3 minutes, so well done on that. So that's our final guest speaker. So before we just go into the actual discussion and debate, Mr. Lewis, did you want to point up or ask a point of clarification, or are we? Yeah, and then we'll go into the discussion and debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just remind members that this is an application for a town or village green, not a local green space or any other designation within a local plan or any other type of area. So there is a very strict criteria. And as I said at the beginning of the report, issues such as suitability, desirability, community needs are not legally relevant. So there's a lot of case law around town and village greens, and obviously there's the regulations within section 15 of the Commons Act. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Right, so discussion and debate. Does anyone have any questions or comments to make on this one? Councillor Adams first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just want to ask about this, your point there, Mr. Lewis, around the application for the village green. Can you confirm what the difference is between a green space application and a village green application, please?
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Yeah, I mean, town or village greens, I've just said and alluded earlier, is within the Commons Act, very strict criteria, and the criteria which we've already mentioned and gone through in the report. A green space, again, I'm no expert on this, but I believe a green space is a designation within the local plan. And I think with the neighbourhood plans as well, which parishes now produce, that you can dedicate land as a local green area or a community asset, I think it's believed that it's called. Obviously, this is something which the planning authorities, so the district and the borough councils, will deal with. So that's as much as I'm aware of it. It's not something that I'm involved in here at the County Council.
Okay, thank you. So we saw, we've obviously got a map or a plan of the site. Are there any other pictures? Were there any other pictures you're going to show in your presentation on this? Just to help us. I think what I'm asking is sort of just to get clarification on how large the area is that we're talking about, because we obviously can see it on the map, paper map there, but just to actually get perhaps a better idea. Would that be possible?
Sorry, Chair. I'll just put one up now. I think I'll probably have to put my presentation back onto the screen. Yeah. Just bear with me a second. Thank you.
So I'm conscious of the fact it's one thing looking at a piece of paper and a map, but it might help if we see something a little bit more visual. So we'll just wait for those to appear. Sorry, I can't. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, because I think when you were giving your presentation, we just had we didn't see the pictures coming through.
So these photos here, we're looking north from the main junction, so you can see the smithy on the left-hand side. Looking a bit further up, so you've got the grassed area to the left-hand side. You've got the track, which also carries the public footpath. That's looking south and back towards the old forge. And then at the top, you can see the thicket which has been planted by the nature group at South Scarl.
Okay, thank you. I sense quite. I will let you just come back if it's just to clarify. I can't get into a debate, but if you just want to tell us, because I asked the question about the size of the area, and you want to be quite specific, don't you?
As yet, you've shown about 55–60% of the area. North of that area there is probably about half an acre of what was the Meadowlands, which goes right up to footpath number 9 terminates at the end of this land, and then you've got other footpaths which go to North Scarl and to various other destinations, and it's at the boundary of the field to the north of there that this area goes, and that is the most important area for the wilding. And you're just showing the house access at the beginning there. It is, and this gentleman is claiming all of this land to be his, and that was an application that fell with the land registry. So it is probably another 40 to 45% missing from your photographs.
Yeah.
And that is all similar to that photograph there.
Okay, thank you for that. Because we're looking at the plan here that shows the cross-hatched area of the application site, and I just wanted to get an idea as to the physical appearance of it and the space. Do you want to? Yeah. Have you seen the hatched plan we're looking at?
The application plan area is the one we had up on the screen earlier, and it's part of the report, which is the hatched area. So if it's wider, the area, it's certainly not the area which was on the application.
Right, thank you for that. And so we have the application as it is in front of us. Councillor Taylor, did you indicate to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually only going to ask whether it was possible to pull a Google Maps satellite image up, but if we're satisfied now that we've got clarity on what we're looking at, then that's not relevant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So again, I hope that I was trying to be helpful with that question actually, because we've got the cross-hatched application site in front of us on the papers, and I just needed to be clear as to what it actually looks like in the round. Councillor Adams again.
Thank you. Just to ask to maybe help the applicants, if it isn't feasible to grant planning on a village green, is it possible to help with some advice towards how they would go about the green space?
Well, that's a very good question, and in actual fact, that was a thought going through my mind as to whether this is the right route to achieve what is plainly trying to be achieved here. I was going to come on to that later, so thank you for that. But Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think I kind of sense we're probably all on the same page in how we deal with this. I feel myself, and I'm sure it's shared by other colleagues who are also district or borough council members, that this seems to be falling between legislation, and it might actually really be perhaps an asset that is a district matter. So my proposal, because I don't think really we want to judge between disputing parties as such. I don't think it's fair, Mr. Chairman, to put onto our officers more than what really is reasonable for them to provide us with, is an interpretation of the legal position, and not to sort of get us embroiled in sort of a dispute. But paragraph 34 perhaps gives us an opportunity to assist the matter when it suggests that we could have an independent inspector to help us, and maybe further clarity as to whether actually it's falling between two stools, and whether really it's another authority that should really consider something similar.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Purdue-Horan. That is a possibility, but it may not be the way to go. Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, I was just just going to mention that. Although it does say public, the inquiry that would be into a village green, which is, as we have sympathy with, is they want it to be a community protected area, whatever the term is. But it would be a village green, which is what the officers have determined it isn't. So the inquiry would only go into that part anyway, so you would still be in the same position at the end. So yes, do have sympathy and have a protected area. It turned itself off, sorry about that. And I'm sure we could actually assist with advice on how to go within the district. But the actual public inquiry would be on a village green and nothing else. So that would be the issue here. We'd be back to square one.
Yeah, I think that is the case. At the end of the day, what we have in front of us today is a village green application, which we either approve or we don't. We can't change what we're approving or not approving. It's what we have in front of us. But I think, as colleagues are saying, I think we know what the applicants are, that their aim and their concerns are. I think there is possible, as colleagues have said, there is another way for them, other areas to pursue in that regard. I think that's my interpretation. Is that a fair comment, do you think, Mr. Lewis? The points we're making here, that we can see what the thoughts are, but this may not be necessarily the method or the place.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I can understand and see where you're coming from, and obviously we're more than happy to assist with district councils or the borough councils, the local planning authorities, to look at a way to help. And we can do that. Of course, the objectors will obviously have in their say as well regarding any sort of designation of that parcel of land. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, colleagues, is that helpful? Is that clear? So, I suspect we can't really do a lot more on this application here today. But unless anyone else wishes to make any points, I think we'd better make a decision on this one. So, Councillor Taylor, you want to come in on something?
Thank you, Chair. I think it is really reiterating the sort of things that we're touching on. So as I was listening to the speakers, both the officer presentation and the speakers behind me, as I was making note, it strikes me that this is really, it distills down to kind of an issue between an individual or individuals who would like to lay claim to an area of land which is currently not registered. And if I heard correctly, an attempt has been made to do that and was rejected following objections from the community, and a parish council and community representatives who are seeking to protect a piece of land. And that's kind of what it distills down to. So I suppose all I'm doing really is reiterating those issues and questioning what processes are perhaps available for those community bodies to pursue to protect this piece of space, what processes there are next, where they should turn next. I think we're all quite clear that determining this application and the way it is framed and the legal limitations to what we're considering, we can probably only reach one conclusion today. That isn't going to be a conclusion which solves the problem that we can all see and have sympathy with. So I suppose that's my question, and I don't know what the answer is in terms of where do people go next.
That's a perfectly understandable question, and I think we'll probably thinking along the same lines. Mr. Lewis, you've touched on you can advise other agencies such as the district council for other possible ways. I'm sure that the applicants and others will be taking messages from today's sort of informal advice that we're giving here. There's possibly other avenues to pursue. Are there any other avenues that the applicants might be able to follow through. Just as a bit of advice, really, as much as anything.
Thank you, Chair. My advice would be, and I'm not sure if the applicants have already done this, is to approach the Open Spaces Society. So that's a charity who support and promote the use of green open space, and they're a valuable asset, certainly for communities in this similar situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And so there we are. And as we say, the application that we decided today is a village green status, which we've seen the recommendation and had quite a discussion on it. So with bearing in mind everything we've been discussing and hearing today, I think we're better go to a decision on this. So we've got the recommendation on page 24. I need a show of hands, please. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. And I think that's unanimous. Just for the record, though, no one against and no abstentions. So the recommendation is to reject the application is approved. There's an oxymoron on that, but the recommendation has been agreed. But I suspect that there will be other avenues for interested parties to follow through, probably away from this authority, or certainly from away from the world of village greens. So thank you. You're very welcome to stay or for the rest of our meeting, or if you want to escape. But thank you for coming in, and thank you for making your points, which were very clear. So thank you. Just wait for the room to clear. Right, colleagues, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which that was our first village green application, of course. So something new for this committee, and but it's very legalistic. It's very well, you've read in the report, you've seen how legal it is. But anyway, we'll move on. This is the next application is amendment to the planning permission for the Staple Quarry at Newark-on-Trent. And I'll move the recommendation, which is on page 78. Councillor Creamer, please.
Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Marsh, you're leading on this one. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is seeking a change to the site restoration of a former gypsum quarry with an ecological and habitat-based restoration to replace an agricultural afteruse, and the substitution of some imported soils by soil improvement materials. Staple Quarry landfill site is located within a former gypsum quarry around 4 kilometres south of Newark and 500 metres to the northeast of the village of Cotton within the open countryside. The former quarry site is divided in two by an access road from Grange Lane, which runs in an east-west direction across the site. This planning application relates to 18.5 hectares of land to the south of the access road, which is leased to FCC Environmental. The site has received non-hazardous wastes for around 20 years, with the waste being used to infill a deep mineral void to return the land to near pre-quarrying levels. The approved restoration scheme for the site creates a gently domed landform, with agricultural grassland to be divided into 3 field parcels by boundary hedgerows with mixed native woodland planting blocks on the lower slopes of the site. This application seeks planning permission to modify the approved restoration scheme, moving away from the approved agricultural afteruse to a more ecological-based habitat. The driver for this change is a shortfall of soils on the site. Although this shortfall is being made up by importing soils into the site under the terms of the existing planning permission, the characteristics of soils available are of poor quality and not suitable for the approved agricultural restoration of the site. In this slide, there is a notable slope in front of the conifers, and in this area where the greatest depth of fill is required. Next slide.
Yeah.
The conifers, the tops of which can be seen in this slide, are to be removed as part of the already approved restoration scheme. The view into the site from the Sustrans cycle route would remain screened by the established native tree belt, which can be seen in front of the conifers. The proposed ecological-based restoration would be less dependent on the import of high-quality soils. The revised restoration scheme would create open glade habitats of grassland, woodland blocks, hedgerows, scattered trees and scrub. As part of the programme of soil importation, consent is sought to allow the receipt of soil improver materials, which would be sourced from byproducts from the waste industry, including composts from anaerobic digestion facilities and filter cake derived from the capture of silt and other sediments in river water abstracted for use in power station cooling. These soil improver materials would be blended with the top 40 centimetres of soils on the site to enhance their structure and nutrient content to support plant growth. The consultation and publicity responses are generally supportive of the proposal. The responses have informed some modifications to the scheme that would enhance the ecological benefits derived from the development, re-establish a footpath link across the site, and the permitted vehicle routing arrangements for the site have been reviewed in response to a representation received from a resident of Alverton Village. The assessment of the development proposals concludes that the modifications to the restoration arrangements would enhance the ecological value of the restored site, consistent with Nottinghamshire Minerals Local Plan Strategic Policy SP2, which promotes a biodiversity-led approach to the restoration and after-use of former mineral sites. The importation of the soil improver material is beneficial since it provides organic rich matter to provide nutrition and a suitable soil structure to support the establishment of vegetation cover, and therefore ensures that these byproducts of the waste industry are beneficially used in a sustainable way. Potential adverse environmental effects would be controlled through both the planning conditions recommended in Appendix 1 of this report and the environmental permit regulated by the Environment Agency. Specifically, the controls in the environmental permit ensure the soil improver materials imported into the site are appropriate in the context of pollution control limits and therefore protect ground and surface waters from pollution in compliance with Nottinghamshire and Nottingham Waste Local Plan policies W3.5 and W3.6. The proposed restoration scheme does not make any alterations to the approved ground levels. The modifications to the planting proposals would have a minimal visual impact on the wider area and not significantly change the landscape character of the restored site. The development is therefore supported by the landscape and visual protection policies of the development plan, specifically Minerals Local Plan policies DM1 and DM5. Modifications have been made to the restoration arrangements for the site to ensure Cottam footpath number 7 is reinstated on its original line and thus ensure that the right-of-way network is satisfactorily protected in compliance with Minerals Local Plan Policy DM7 and Waste Local Plan Policy W3.26. The proposal does not change the overall volume of material to be imported to the site, and there would be no overall change to the number or character of vehicle movements as a result of the development. Lorry routing is regulated in the existing planning permission by a Section 106 legal agreement which requires all delivery vehicles to access the site from either the A52 to the south at Elton using the C3 road, or from the A1 to the north via Staple Lane and Grange Lane, avoiding less suitable minor rural roads in the wider and residential areas of Newark. These long-standing routing arrangements have been reviewed with regard to the ongoing construction of the Newark Southern Link Road, which, if it was to be opened before the completion of the permitted soils import programme in October 2024, it would provide an acceptable access route to the site. The recommendation is to grant planning permission for the development, subject to the applicant entering into a new Section 106 legal agreement to regulate lorry routing and the conditions set out in Appendix 1 of the report. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marsh. Any points of, well, actually, we don't really need points of clarification at this stage because we don't have any guest speakers on this, so we can go straight into the discussion and debate. With that, unless let's do that. So, does anyone have any comments or questions on this one, Councillor Taylor?
Thank you. Colleagues and certainly planning officers won't be surprised about my questions, partly for clarification and then partly to plead for a community. I have listened carefully, I have read the report, but just to articulate this and distill it down. Any need for an environmental impact assessment, please? And have we covered that one off? You won't be surprised at my question given this applicant and the nature of this application. The EA comments in paragraph 29 is that there's no objection, so I'm assuming that this is already subject to a licence and that the proposal complies with the existing licence, but just clarification on that. And when I look at paragraph 23 and it talks about the kind of soils which are being called soil improvement materials, but then goes on to say that they're sourced from waste sources, including filter cake derived from the capture of silt and other sediments in river water when abstracted from use in power stations, you can see how that conjures an image of something that is less than clean, pure. So some reassurance that the nature of the soils that will be used for the restoration will not be contaminated. And again, officers will recognise why with this applicant and this application I'm asking that question, following a recent application elsewhere. And then the other is in respect of our robustness in conditioning, not only of the HGV routing, but that loads should be covered, loads should be sheeted. It's not an option, it's a prerequisite, and that our conditions will be robust enough to make sure that we can enforce if they are not. So they're the two aspects of my inquiry about the quality of the soil going in, and that there's an absence of contaminants, please, and that we're quite clear that's the case. And secondly, that any lorry movements will be properly sheeted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Perfectly understandable and clear questions and points there. So, what do we say about those points, please, Mr. Marsh? I suspect you might be referring to some of the conditions, but we just need to further clarification.
Thank you.
I'll come back to me on one. Come back to me on first.
Right. On the first point on the environmental impact assessment, my colleague Joel is just going to have a look to make sure that has been through the appropriate assessment. The existing site is already permitted by the Environment Agency, and it would need to be re-permitted for the proposed use. So there'll be a revision to the permit for the character of the soils would be controlled by the Environment Agency's permit, and while loads should be sheeted, that can be controlled on the within the application site, but the police would enforce the route the movement of safe loads on the public highway. If that, as a matter of course, loads should be sheeted to prevent debris falling on the public highway.
I sense you want to come back on this, Councillor Taylor.
On that last point particularly, I understand that if an application site exists as a site within red lines, our planning permission is for that site. So I understand the difficulty of us attempting to impose conditions beyond that site perimeter, but it's bizarre to consider that somebody might behave on site properly. How did they get to site to start with? So is there nothing that we can do in our conditioning that shows our teeth, at least, even if we're not allowed to bite?
Perfectly fair question, and you're reflecting concerns that people would possibly have, even though we may not have necessarily had them in the report. So, what about beefing up the conditions, perhaps somehow, or for want of a better expression? While we're just looking that up, our legal advisor would like to come in on this.
Sorry, if it may assist my planning colleagues, I think it might help me just to explain the difficulties in effectively controlling the use of the highway, and that term is where the problem lies. It's the highway. So we can control the route someone will use in terms of their impact on the highway, but it wouldn't be appropriate to put in place a condition that would regulate how the highway is used in that way, as the enforcement of that element of it would lie outside of the powers of this committee and this planning authority, unfortunately.
So is there any way that we can frame our language within our conditions that makes it very clear what our expectations are about an applicant's compliance with other regulations? Is that a reasonable use of language within our conditions, so that our expectations are very clear? And I've got two officers here who hear from me and my residents regularly about unsheeted loads in another place, so they know exactly why my questioning is so robust.
Again, I think we could put an advisory on the planning permission and in terms of what we would expect and the behaviour from the operator. In terms of inside the condition itself, I think we would struggle to frame that. But yeah, in terms of making the applicant and the operator aware what's expected of them, we can definitely put an advisory on the planning permission. But obviously that would be subject to my planning colleagues.
Does that help? So, Mr. Marsh, possibly put advisories in the conditions. Could we look at that?
We can add any advisories to a granted planning permission, and in terms of specific issues to be addressed, we'd take advice from committee on that.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Taylor, I hope that's some help and reassurance to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Having articulated it, it helps. It obviously doesn't help the residents for those particular drivers and operators who are less than vigilant, and we'll still get reports, and I'm sure officers will still get reports if people don't behave as they should, but we can only control so much.
And also, just to make it clear, you're not suggesting for one moment that will be necessarily the case with this. You're just being cautious, I think.
Absolutely, yes, Chair.
Councillor Henry.
Yes, I was just clarification. I don't know if I missed it or not, but you talked a lot about the hedgerow, the conifers that you take out. Is there going to be a replacement to look as nice as the conifers, or just going to leave it blank?
Under the existing grant of planning permission, there's a requirement for the conifers to be removed. They're not part of the sort of the local landscape character. Joel has just done, hopefully,
don't seem to have control.
one of the slides which we showed the tops of the conifers, and that was the view from the cycle route which runs along the western side of the site, and also there was a view from within the site. There is already a belt of trees established in front of those conifers, so the conifers will be removed, but the site would still be screened by the existing maturing tree belt.
Thank you very much. I hope that's helpful. Gosh, we're getting very detailed with this one, aren't we? And quite right too. Just going back to the transport side of things, we've read and heard about the concern from a resident of the routing, and we know it's a long established route, but we have made reference to the Newark Southern Relief Road, which hopefully, when that is up and running, will resolve a lot of the concerns and queries that are raised here. Just for clarification, though, more than anything, you in your report you referred to it in possibly from around about 2024. In the report, it refers to 2023. So are we saying it is in reality? It's more like, I mean, is that just a typo? Do you think on paragraph 86?
My understanding is that that was the latest advice, but I understand that Newark and Sherwood are tendering for the work at the moment. I think everyone's awaiting an update on that, and then on the timescales that may be revised once that tender has come in. But they are actively now tendering for that remaining part of the link road, which would take the road out to the A46 at Farndon.
Excellent. So I think whatever guise we're wearing, we're very used to time scales, and sometimes they move a little bit, don't they? But at least the intention is there, and it is in the report, and hopefully when that route does open up, then that will relieve concern on that C3 road, which is a long established route for the quarry anyway. Right, okay. Any other points or questions, or shall we make a decision on this? I don't think there's anything else to add. We've got the notes about the advisory and the routing. So show of hands, please. Those in favour of the application, please show. I think that's unanimous for the record. No one against and no abstentions. So that's permission is granted. As per the recommendations, also the observations and advisories we've referred to. So thank you. So we now go on to our next application, which is a variation of scheme for Bestwood 2 quarry at Papplewick. And this is so another variation to an existing permission. I'll move the recommendation, which is on page 109.
Seconded, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Marsh again. off to the Bestwood quarry now.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application is seeking a change to the methodology for mitigating habitat creation at Bestwood 2 Sand Quarry. Planning permission for a 4.5 hectare eastward extension of the Bestwood 2 quarry was granted in December 2018. The permission was granted subject to conditions, including the creation of ecological habitat on the site and a Section 106 agreement for off-site works to create and manage a new heathland-based habitat at Calverton Burnstump Quarry. The off-site works were required as ecological mitigation so that that could not be fully addressed on the Bestwood 2 quarry site. The Section 106 agreement also included participation in a quarry liaison committee. The Section 106 agreement did not include flexibility to allow it to be transferred to any subsequent permission that may be granted. A variation to the scheme to create habitat in the Bestwood 2 quarry is sought, and because of the need for a replacement Section 106 agreement, the application is referred to committee under its terms of reference. Bestwood to Sherwood Sandstone Quarry is located approximately 1 kilometre to the south of Ravenshead on the east side of the A60 Mansfield Road. Access to the site is via a purpose-built haul road joining the A60. The sand and gravel processing plant is located in the centre of the quarry, discharging silt water into lagoons to the north. West, south and east are areas of previously worked void, and mineral extraction is currently progressing within the 4.5 hectare eastern extension granted planning permission in December 2018. The extension area prior to extraction incorporated part of the larger Longdale Plantation local wildlife site, noted for its oak birch woodland habitat. The quarry has been operational for many years and is well established with infrastructure, including a surfaced haul road, way bridges, wheel wash, side cabins, car parking and processing plant. During the initial planning application assessment for the eastern extension of the quarry, the removal of a section of Longdale Plantation's local wildlife site, woodland, was considered to be acceptable, as long as adequate habitat compensation was provided. This was secured through Condition 27 of the Permission, which required the submission of a methodology for the creation and subsequent management of offset mitigation habitats. Condition 27, Part A, provided for the transfer and direct placement of woodland soils from the local wildlife site extension area to 3 woodland soil receptor sites located west, centre and east along the southern wall of the existing quarry void. Deadwood sourced from the felling of the trees was then to be placed into these 3 receptor sites in varying arrangements, with some root clumps placed directly into the ground, some lengths of deadwood set vertically, and also lying deadwood on the ground. The deadwood was to provide habitat for plants and invertebrates and support the development of a wider ecosystem. In 2019, tree roots were placed into a single temporary store near the western soil receptor site, pending subsequent placement across the 3 receptor sites. The onset of very wet weather in late 2019 and early 2020 delayed the transfer of the felled timber into the other receptor sites, and site closure and business continuity issues arising from COVID restrictions meant that the timber was not relocated in 2020 and 2021. An ecological assessment undertaken in October 2021 identified that the temporary timber store was providing important habitats for amphibians, including common frog, toad, smooth and palmate newts, and invertebrates. A decision not to redistribute timber from the temporary store was made in consultation with NCC Nature Conservation because of the ecological value of the store at present and the likely negative impact on biodiversity that would be caused by the disturbance and redistribution of wood. Consequently, the applicant has not been able to fully deliver the deadwood placement in compliance with the approved scheme. Planning permission is sought for a modified ecological mitigation scheme. Since no further timber is available from the site, the applicant proposes to amend the scheme approved in compliance with Condition 27 by using deadwood imported from other tarmac quarry sites. Potential donor sites have been identified at Lockington in Leicestershire and Elveston, Whitwell and Hindlow quarries, all in Derbyshire, where crack willow, alder, silver birch, hawthorn, ash, sycamore, oak and beech are available either as logs or stumps and are suitable species. With regard to ash dieback, NCC Nature Conservation has confirmed that there are no restrictions on the transportation of ash timber, branches or leaves. The source, species and size of wood to be imported would be finalised through a submission to comply with recommended condition 25. Deadwood equating to an area of up to 1,500 square metres and estimated to be no more than 24 loads is proposed to be distributed across the 3 woodland soil receptor sites to provide deadwood habitat. Existing logs already placed in the western section will be retained as at present. The quarry is directly accessed from the A60 and highway issues are not anticipated. NCC Nature Conservation consultation response supports the retention of the existing deadwood pile, now a valuable area of habitat in its own right, along with the importation of deadwood from off-site to ensure that the original objectives for the woodland creation are still met. Subject to the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement for off-site provision of new heathland habitat at Calverton Burnstone Quarry, and to provide for the continuation of an annual liaison meeting as set out in its constitution between the operator, Minerals Planning Authority and representatives of the local community, the recommendation is to grant planning permission for the development, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. We have no guest speakers on this one either. And can I just check, looking at the consultations, there's no, it says on paragraph 23, no response from the couple of the parish councils, Gedling Borough Council, Ravenshead Parish Council, Papplewick Parish Council, and Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust. Have they sent anything in since the report was prepared? I assume not, but just to confirm. No.
No further updates.
Okay, thank you. So, righty-ho, with that in mind, does anyone wish to ask any questions or comments, observations, please, on this one? Or, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. This may not be a question you can answer, but I just find point 11 quite interesting, that it's taken a year for us to get to this point. So, you know, they carried out an assessment in September, October 21, yet we're in November 22 and we're still discussing it. So I found that quite interesting. Also, point 12 says that now that they've used all their logs, or some were lost during COVID due to weather, they're going to import the logs. And obviously with importation comes a carbon footprint, and there's going to be about 24 loads. Do we know where they're going to import those from? Because the benefit of that might be offset by the carbon footprint of the lorries.
Yes. Would this be the Leicestershire and Derbyshire quarries you refer?
Yes, they are. So the quarries are Lockington in Leicestershire, and it was Whitwell, Hindlow, and Elveston in Derbyshire. Those are other tarmac sites, and they have appropriate species within those quarries.
Okay, thank you. So not too far in the great. It could be a lot further. Right. Any other questions? I have to say, I mean, I've said this before on quarry applications. I never cease to be fascinated at the amount of work, the way the restoration works of quarries, and then within a relatively short space of time, you see the wildlife coming back. I mean, the photographs we saw there of the reptiles, it does give you hope, actually. But anyway, I'm digressing. No other points. Shall we make a decision on this? So a show of hands, all in favour, please show. So yes, that's unanimous again. No one against, no abstention. So thank you very much for that. And we will then go on to the next item, which is the Development Management Progress Report, which is on. Well, we've got it's a recommendation really to when I find it, I'll get to the right page, 131. It's here somewhere. Yeah, I've definitely got it here somewhere. Yeah, here we are. So yes, we've got to consider whether there's any actions that we require in relation to the contents of the report. So I better move that. So, Councillor Creamer, just for the record.
Yeah, second it and reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith, Jonathan, you're online still, aren't you? I think so. Do you want to guide us through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's the standard report to members setting out the applications that have been received and determined since we last met at the end of September, and it also sets out the future programme for the committee. Just noting the application down at Private Road number 3 at Colic for the amendments to the scheme for the new waste transfer station down there. The applicant company Veolia have offered members the opportunity to visit another one of their waste transfer stations up in Worksop. Should members wish to undertake that site visit, I think it would be interesting to see, how the suite of waste transfer stations across the county, how they work and help to manage the county's waste. So, if members are interested in that site visit, we can certainly put measures in place and speak to Veolia and try and find some suitable dates to undertake that visit before committee on the 13th of December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yes, that would be a visit to a waste transfer station. I think would be very helpful because we as well, no doubt Councillor Adams will just want to come in on this because we have got an application coming up in December in Councillor Adams' area, and he's keen for us to discuss it and decide it at committee. So, do you want to say anything about this, Councillor Adams, or yeah?
Other than to say thank you very much for organising that and also ensuring it comes to committee, because it's definitely an application that will have public interest with the nature of it, and I think it's really important that in planning committees residents get the opportunity to hear and see the debate of things that are such an important thing locally. So thank you for ensuring, Chairman, that this is present and we have the opportunity to go and view one of those sites. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I think general consensus is we would welcome an opportunity to visit the workshop site. So we'll set the wheels in motion to try and get diaries coordinated. I know it's not an easy thing to do. Everyone's got busy diaries. So, but the more, as many people who can get there on whatever date is decided, the better, I would suggest. And then otherwise, looking at the future reports coming or applications coming to committee, certainly we're not going to be bored, are we? Well, we're never bored on this committee, but there's certainly plenty of interesting applications coming through. So, any more questions on that one? Or Councillor Taylor?
Sorry, Chair, I have to take the chances when I get them. It's just looking at the penultimate paragraph on page 139, and this officers will confirm whether this is just a question of timing in terms of publication of reports. But I believe that the situation on that particular planning application has moved.
Could you just clarify which one?
It's Danes Hill Road, Lound. It's the soil treatment facility application. And the situation as reported in that paragraph has moved, but it's very possible that in terms of report publishing dates, that we've just missed things there.
Yes, Mr. Marshall, please.
Yes, thank you. I actually don't have any further update on that planning application at this moment in time, but we may have movement on it shortly. What we are aware of is a decision from the Environment Agency on a separate environmental permit relating to that site, and that will have implications for this planning application yet to be determined, and as soon as we have clarity we'll let the local member and the local community know. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Taylor? Okay, thank you very much. Right, no other questions or comments on the work programme on the forward plan. And did you want? No, you're okay with that. So that's good. So that's the final formal item on the agenda. So I mentioned that we're going to have a short presentation now from Nick Crouch on ecological matters. Do we need to stop the YouTube for this? So we need to close. Right. Okay. So that's the end of the formal items are for this meeting. So I'll formally close the meeting and thanking you all for your participation. It's 7 minutes. Well, 11:55 or 11:53. So that's the end of the actual planning and right-of-way meeting, but if the committee can hold on for the next 10 or 15 minutes for a presentation. So thank you very much. So we'll close the YouTube down now. Thank you. Do we all know Nick, by the way? I'm sure we know Nick Crouch from... Yep, that's